All right. What's up, fuckbook? All right, so uh, I've been looking into something that's been referred to as the Facebook trap, and it's part of something that was talked about in that movie. What is it called? The Social Dilemma, when they were talking about kind of how all these these social application companies have spent a lot of money in researching and development in regards to keeping people engaged on the apps and how to make them all in more encompassing. And when I stopped using Facebook the other week, and I just recently reinstalled it just to upload this video, and I got a backup for YouTube in my minds. I noticed how many other shopping apps that I used and other apps that I used I can no longer access because I didn't have Facebook on my phone anymore. Just simply just because I didn't have it on my phone, like the apps themselves wouldn't work properly, which was a little interesting in to say of itself. The other thing that I started getting in trouble for with Facebook, I can almost pinpoint when I started talking shit about the fact checkers and how they go about their quote unquote fact checks, and how often my stuff started to get flagged after that. The biggest problem that I have is that Facebook and other big tech companies like that, they pose themselves as a platform, and a platform is almost simply saying, here, this is a public square, you get up here, you can say anything that's already allowed by the law. Anything beyond that they can't censor on a platform. Now a publisher gets to choose beyond the law what they want to support and what they don't want to support, and that is one of the biggest differences there. So when Facebook goes out of its way to, I don't know, say like flag one of my posts talking about how people tend to get headaches, or why people seem to get headaches when they wear the masks, and how a doctor was measuring how much carbon dioxide intake you have when you wear a mask, got flagged for like saying that it's proven that double masking didn't cause a second outbreak. Like, I mean, beyond the fact that that has nothing to do with the other, they also don't have any room for a rebuttal. Another bullshit thing that happened is I was talking shit about how Chick-fil-A, don't want to get too much on the the religion bashing it, but Chick-fil-A has, like other religious companies, has a very strong stance against things that go outside their doctrine. And I was talking shit about how Chick-fil-A is, and apparently that goes against the community standard. So at times it doesn't even seem to make sense. All right, now most recently, I'm pretty sure a lot of people have seen that weak ass press interview that Biden had put out there. I mean, besides the fact that he's clearly going by cue cards, it's all but stated that there was some sort of coercion between him and the press about what kind of questions were going to be asked and who the questions were going to be coming from. Now, to what extent, I guess, is debatable. But I've talked about it before, about the book 1984 and the things that George Orwell talked about. And, there's just beats to how history repeats itself. But one of the main characters, Winston, worked for the Ministry of Truth. And his job was to go in and alter facts of events that happened. And they would do it multiple times in multiple different ways. And the main goal was to further confuse and disorient the public. And as soon as that press conference is over, you've got CNN and MS and other mainstream medias just covering. Like, when he said he's been in Senate for 120 years, they straight up said that that's not what he said, when you can clearly tell that's what he said, or they will go out of their ways to say that it was a joke. And then when he clearly made a statement that he would turn a child away from the border who had a parent that was available outside of the country, they said that's not what he said, that it was misinterpreted on what he said. And that's where again, like, the biggest aggravation I have with this whole fact checking and censoring misleading information is when Trump was giving press interviews, when he was just saying stupid shit like, I don't know, we have special cleaners that can be put into the skin and blah, 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 blah. Again, like he had fucking terrible delivery of it. It got to a point that the press would go out of their way to to interrupt his press interviews and say, due to their integrity, they can no longer allow it to continue, which, in of itself is interesting and has a clear double standard. And then even to go on further about lies about the migration surge, and to say, like, there was one surge, and that was when there was obviously the caravan that was coming through. But in the short time that Biden has been a president, there's been an 89% surge. And now you have people like Kamala Harris. Now you have people like Jen Psaki, who, when they can't hide the evidence anymore, are saying that there's a crisis at the border, yet they still refuse to allow press into the actual cages. The ones that, one of the ones that Trump closed, they reopened in Florida, I think it is. And they refused to allow the press in there, and some of those leaked photos they're just terrible. And he said that he will let them in there once he implements what he needs to implement. And that's, again, I can't say for a fact, but that clearly sounds like to me like it's saying, like, I'll let you guys in once I move everybody out to these military forts, and you can't really tell what was going on. That's just terrible in of itself. I mean, like, you gotta remove all of your political stance to see that, again, like I've said it before, like, I don't really have much allegiance. I have allegiance to the country, but not the government. If people can't see that the fact that every election you can guarantee that you're going to either be voting on a Democrat or a Republican is enough of itself of how rigged the system is, then, well, fucking sorry to you. And then he goes on, from that to talk about, like, and again, it's like his attempts at jokes are terrible. Like, even I'm not that funny and I'm not that best organized, but I like to say if I'm talking about something, people can tell the passion that I'm putting behind it, and his delivery falls flat. And I just don't think in your first press interview as president, when you're breaking records for going the longest in the last century, making jokes considering everything that's going on socially is not really the climate to be doing that. But his Jim Eagle comment to equate voter ID registration or voter ID for voting registration to Jim Crow laws is just on another level. Besides the fact, the irony that a lot of people, Facebook likes to censor this or likes to try to, make it seem like one little detail's out of context. But Joe Biden did go and speak at the eulogy of Robert Byrd. Robert Byrd is a Democratic leader who was also a leader of the KKK. Yet that's just fucking fallen on fucking deaf ears. I've even heard people make excuses and say that Biden acknowledges what he used to hold views for before was wrong, and it's different now because he wants to do things better. And it's like, that's the same old fucking tried and true Democratic sell. And it's fucking ridiculous that people can't, I don't know, they the tribalism is ridiculous sometimes. Again, like, I think currently politics is lost on a lot of people when they hold allegiances to these politicians that they're not permanent life stations. It's not a monarchy or a dictatorship. These politicians are supposed to hold allegiances to us. They're supposed to be public servants, but I find that very interesting that it is that in order to go to the dispensary, at least here in Nevada, it's legal to go to weed dispensaries. And the process for getting checked into a weed dispensary in the eyes of the Democrats should be more secure than the process to register and vote on the in this constitutional republic. You would think that the ability to vote on the country's leader and other politicians and other small matters would be more secure than it is to check into a methadone clinic. Like, that kind of escapes me that they allow that to become a thing about race. Besides the fact that when you hear Biden and other politicians speak, it's veiled in so much racism to say that black people or minorities don't know how to use the internet, that they are so, whatever word you want to use, that they don't have the ability or the knowledge to go down and get an ID. Besides, how patronizing is that? Then to continue to wrap it up, he gets a question about, it was basically, I guess, a two-parter, but he was asked, considering the fact that he stated that he would institute, more gun legislation into it, one which would include, on day one, he stated he would hold gun manufacturers responsible for any shooting that takes place. He was also asked, when will that come into light? And he answered about infrastructure, he answered about children, he answered about education. In my opinion, for one of two reasons, or possibly both, is that question wasn't supposed to be asked, so it wasn't actually on his little ticker card, or that, of all the things that he may not be aware of, all Democrats know that, at least the politicians on the side of the Democrats know, that gun legislation is one of the losing issues that they've had over. The government, and largely in Democratic controlled areas, haven't been able to win the war on drugs. They haven't been able to win the war on child trafficking. They haven't been able to win the war on homelessness. You look at areas like Chicago is setting the highest numbers on average every weekend for shootings and fatalities, or shooting fatalities. And that is one of the most gun restricted areas in the country. Their laws, their methods don't work because, again, it's oxymoronic to put in legislation about gun ownership that affects legal gun owning citizens. Criminals don't follow laws. So that's like saying, in order to stop people from getting in car wrecks when they're drunk driving, we need to restrict cars from people. Like, it's, you can't legislate evil just like they can't legislate this virus out of existence. I would encourage everybody to at least look in other means of interaction. It's very ironic that in the time of this technological advancement, the world is in essence more connected than ever, but people are more alone and more separated by these devices. I would encourage more people to look into the documentary The Social Dilemma, and to just try to delete the app and see the anxiety that you get, that you don't have some digital interface, some magic box on your fucking phone that just keeps you mindlessly inundated with pointless information and pointless trials and tribulations that will never actually affect your life. I'm going to remain socially active, but I refuse to, play ball. I mean, not that I matter anyway, but I'm not going to, play ball with these fucking big tech sites that openly censor without any way to rebut, that have fact checkers that will link to articles that have nothing to do with the actual statements made, or only link to articles that actually corroborate the statements made. I'm on Minds at Baker the Low 13110 and YouTube at Valpy's Gaming. I'm going to be doing a video here shortly on reading all the amendments of the Constitution, and I'm going to try to stay away from the term interpret to them, because they're very clearly stated. Shall not be infringed means shall not be infringed. Freedom of speech means freedom of speech, and so on and so forth. But it's very interesting. And then I'm also looking into possibly doing a reading of, the close to 60 now executive orders that have been signed into action, and going over the actual titles and the descriptions of them, because some of them are actually very interesting. Again, just try not to get stuck in the Facebook trap, you guys.